Welcome back, and thank you for joining us for another episode of The Source. I'm your host, Raza. And today we'll be talking about a case which is not receiving much traction in the Western media. And this case is about Yurii Sheliazhenko, who's being charged by the Ukrainian government for justifying the Russian war, even though he considers his stance as advocating for de-escalation and diplomacy. Yurii is the executive secretary of the Ukrainian Pacifist Movement and a member of the European Bureau for Conscientious Objection and World Beyond War. Yurii, welcome back to the show.
Good day, and thank you for invitation.
Yurii, before we get into the details of your case, even though I briefly mentioned this in the introduction, could you very briefly introduce in your own words your work and your policy stance towards the Ukrainian war?
Well, first of all, I must say that now, in this moment, when we are recording this interview, I am risking my life, not risking as people in more hot places in Ukraine, but still, there is air raid alert in Kiev. There are rockets somewhere, and in any moment, since I am not in shelter, unfortunately there is bad connection in shelter, I must be here and talk truth to the world, even if some rocket because of criminal Russian aggression end right here, and even if people will see some sort of blow of Putin's rocket instead of some new information which I intend to give you, all in hands of God. All depends on what is going on. But anyway, I am glad for this opportunity. Truth telling is important part of our work, and we are talking about distortions in perception of what is going on, distortions, especially the image of enemy, and there is usual problem in any conflict, especially in case of war, when propaganda says other side are like demons and we are angels, so we could do anything, even it is if it is war crimes or human rights violations, but all we are doing is good. Other side is bad, it deserves any crime which we commit, and this image of enemy should be exposed. We are calling for ceasefire and peace talks, and for advocacy of peace, it is important to reveal exaggerations of propaganda of war. It is indeed bad and even criminal behavior, like decision of President of Russian Federation to invade Ukraine, to bomb our cities, to kill people, to destroy our cities, and suffering of people is unimaginable. Millions left Ukraine, but also millions left Ukraine not because of this criminal aggression of Russian regime, but also it is because of human rights violations resulting from mobilization policy of our own government, which is not respecting human rights. When I am talking with military people, when I am writing to Ministry of Defense, please ensure human right to conscientious objection to military service according to international human rights obligations of Ukraine, Article 4, Article 18 of International Covenant for Civil and Political Rights. Answer is, we don't know, we don't like this human right. They don't recognize international human rights obligations of Ukraine. And even when after a long chain of communications, I managed to receive official letter from Ukrainian Parliament Commissioner for Human Rights, recognizing international human rights obligations of Ukraine to ensure human right to conscientious objection to military service. Even with this letter, our military still insists that they are not respecting right to refuse to kill. It is just wrong.
Let us now talk about your case in detail. The Ukraine government has tried to silence you for advocating de-escalation of the Ukraine war, which includes moving forward with a peaceful resolution achieved through diplomacy. They interpret this as justifying Russian aggression. Your house was raided and a court decided to put you under house arrest. Can you take us to the beginning and provide us details how it all started and what has happened until now?
On 21st September last year, Ukrainian Pacifist Movement adopted a statement, Peace Agenda for Ukraine and the World. It is comprehensive statement, of course, recognizing that we are denouncing Russian aggression, of course, calling for ceasefire and peace talks, of course, calling for protection of right to refuse to kill. I sent this letter to President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, to Ukrainian Parliament Commissioner for Human Rights, Dmytro Lubinets. And what they done, instead of considering this petition for peace on the merits, they sent it to Security Service of Ukraine. I have a copy of letter from Office of Parliament Commissioner for Human Rights, Mr. Kononenko, and in this letter it is said that our petition is threat to national security. By the way, this position of Secretariat of Parliamentary Commissioner for Human Rights is changed now, because after many complaints, at least they informed me that they sent to the Security Service of Ukraine this absurd denunciation. And I started to complain, and in result, personally, Parliamentary Commissioner for Human Rights Dmytro Lubinets sent a letter in which international human rights obligations of Ukraine recognized. And by the way, in annual report of this National Human Rights Institution also recognized human rights violations during mobilization. But I don't know how from office of President Zelenskyy to Security Service came our letter and the statement, Peace Agenda for Ukraine and the World, because they just didn't told me. They didn't responded. They didn't replied on complaints. Where is your response? Please reply. They, as I understand, they just sent it to Security Service. It was a year ago. And you know, according to procedural law, security services could surveil secretly any person during a year, and after a year, they should do something to legalize what they done. Because if it was all in vain, without any proofs of threats to national security, of course, it is evidence that human rights are violated. Their so-called secret operative work is human rights violations. So on 3rd August, it is like 2 weeks ago, some people came here to my home. Also, it is like small headquarters of our small organization, Ukrainian Pacifist Movement, and some people started to bang in my door, knock very loudly. I asked, who is this? They say that is Security Service of Ukraine, open. I said, well, if you indeed Security Service of Ukraine, please say, what is your name? What is your purpose? They didn't say any name, and they said also they have court decision on search. I said, please read this court decision allowing them to search. They didn't read court decisions. They didn't say their names. So I presumed it is absolutely something illegal. Maybe it is even not some official persons. I called police, but I also called a lawyer in case if it is indeed security service. Instead of waiting lawyer, I said to them, lawyer said me 40 minutes and lawyer will be here. If you are indeed security service, if you are acting legally, let's my lawyer check what you have. If it is some sort of legal court decision, we will do everything which law demands. But they didn't act according to the law. They just broken into my apartment. They started their search without my lawyer, without compliance with proper procedures. They turned upside down my apartment. They taken my computer and my smartphone and some documents. And I even showed them what is on my computer. I said, if you are interested in something particular, I will show you. But they came to take my computer and smartphone to obstruct my human rights activities and my advocacy of peace. Investigation was all absurd pretext just to obstruct human rights defending work and advocacy of peace. And I imagine, I think it is because militarists are scared. It is growing voices for peace in the world. People in Ukraine are tired from war. Human rights violations regarding mobilization, such as abducting people on streets, stuffing them into vans and transporting people against their will to military recruitment centers, to military units. All of this is very painful. So they are scared in delegitimization of war. We pacifists believe that war is a crime against humanity, and therefore we should be determined not to support any kind of war and to strive for the removal of all causes of war. And of course, any ideas that war could be legitimate are by definition is laughable for pacifists. But even some sort of created image of by propaganda of legitimacy of just war, it vanishes when political repression start. It is why in Russian Federation this war was illegitimate from the first day, because all these repressions against peace movements, against human rights defenders, when, for example, our friends from Russian movements of conscientious objectors is declared so-called foreign agent, and it means that they hardly could operate legally in Russia, and all people whom they helped also could be called foreign agents, and there is a lot of scrutiny and a lot of risks related to this status. So in Russia, thankfully to Western media, all world knows how blatant is human rights violations of Putin regime, war crimes of Putin regime. When talking about Ukraine, of course, I must say that scale of human rights violations and war crimes in Ukraine is much lesser. But it is underreported in Western media.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. Yeah, I want to talk to you first more about your case, and then we proceed with that topic. Who is responsible for the Secret Service? Who can be held accountable for that? And what happened after that whole incident with your lawyers? In what state are you today?
Well, obviously, it is political repressions against Ukrainian Pacifist Movement, against me as human rights defender and public advocate of peace. And these political repressions, it is documented, are related to office of President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, and unfortunately also some people in the Secretariat of Ukrainian Parliament Commissioner for Human Rights, Dmytro Lubinets, probably not Lubinets himself, but one of his underlings, Mr. Kononenko, are responsible for start of this political persecution. And from documents disclosed by investigator when request for home arrest was handed to me with attachments, I saw that this investigation was started because someone in the Secretariat of Ukrainian Human Rights Commissioner for Ukrainian Parliament Commissioner for Human Rights, their office just redirected all complaints on violations of human rights to conscientious objection. They redirected it to Security Service of Ukraine under this pretext that it is some sort of threat to national security. And in result of a year of surveillance, they probably listened to my phone. They probably had read my correspondence. They probably also monitored the financial transactions. They found nothing. On my computer, on my smartphone, they found, no SMS from Putin, no like 30 silver pieces from Putin. Yeah, but they sent peace agenda for Ukraine and the world, well thought, very complicated document which envisages some real approaches how to build peace, not this so-called formula of peace by Zelensky, which is formula of endless war, because the key point of it is Kiev Security Compact, and Kiev Security Compact is about decades of weapons supplies, decades of defensive war, and total mobilization of people in Ukraine for war. Plus this Kiev Security Compact, plus some ultimatums to Putin, like head off with your troops, return our territories, don't threat our ecology, don't threat our nuclear power stations. And in this aspect, I totally agree with official position of Ukraine. Now our goal should be Russia get off Ukraine and NATO out of existence. Yeah, Russia out of Ukraine, NATO out of existence. I want not only removal of this gang of killers, this Russian army from Ukraine. I want world without armies. I want the world with nonviolent governance, and we should work on these big changes, transformations in the world by education, by informing people about threats and unrealistic visions of the world by archaic cultures of militarism and violence. There is no alternative to big changes. The only alternative proposed by propaganda, it is like a total victory. We will eliminate all enemies, but it could not happen, because when you choose such unrealistic, such maximalist goals, when you pursuing maximalist goals, you hurting a lot of people, and eliminating enemies, you create tens, hundreds of new enemies. And another idea, also unrealistic idea, is like return to status quo. You know, let's make it what it was like in 90s. It is also unfortunately impossible, because this war is a result of structural problems of militarized global economy. Also result, of course, of lack of awareness about such problems as climate change. Instead of increasing welfare of suffering people and suffering nature, we are killing each other, which is absolute madness. We should stop.
And I would also like to talk about the peace movement inside of Ukraine, as well as the state of the media. First, how big is the peace movement in Ukraine, and how are they treated? And secondly, does the media in Ukraine provide a platform for people advocating for peace or voicing for ceasefire?
You know, in Ukraine, any mentions about peace is presented as some sort of object of fear and hate. They are trying to press on us to have peace. They are trying to deprive us of our territories and so on. But we will not give up even inch of our sacred land, and so on and so on. It is totally false agenda of the demonization of peace voices as part of enemy propaganda, and it is, of course, one of results of creation of demonized and realistic image of enemy. When instead of resisting bad behavior without violence, or with minimum minimorum of it, when you are starting to see enemies around, it inevitably leads to excessive violence and absolutely crazy worldview. And this is what you could see in official propaganda of war, and there are not many alternatives to this official propaganda of war. Of course, people have access to internet, but since people mostly know Ukrainian language or Russian language, not English, English speaking alternative media, which are more or less balanced, they are criticizing Russian aggression, they are also criticizing human rights violations in Ukraine, they are calling to peace, but in Ukraine, people mostly have no choice choice to read alternative Western media. They mostly have choice between Ukrainian-speaking propaganda of war and Russian-speaking propaganda of war too. Two sorts of propaganda: propaganda of Putin criminal war and propaganda of Ukrainian defensive war. And part of this propaganda is, of course, restricted, and people could also be punished for trying to access at least official version of other side or discussing it, because this so-called justification of war, this to be precise, this article of criminal code in which I accused, it is article number 436/2 of Criminal Code of Ukraine. It is justification, negation of Russian aggression, glorification of participants. This article was adopted in first day of Russian invasion of Ukraine, and we could understand, of course, this reaction. If people are glorifying those who are killing Ukrainians here, thousands of people, of course, it is something wrong with those who are doing it. It should be some sort of propaganda of war, and propaganda of war, of course, should be criminal. On the other side, this term justification is very vague. And it is not linked to, for example, definition of aggression adopted by United Nations General Assembly in 1974. It is just justification, and only one evidence in my case, a part of text of Peace Agenda for Ukraine and the World, it is so-called expert opinion. And this expert opinion, expert is not a lawyer. It is, and probably even know very little about laws. It is so-called linguistic, semantic, textual expertise. It is based, according to this expert, on some sort of dictionaries. Some of them were published even before definition of aggression was adopted, before 1974. And it is about, like, in this statement, it is said that we condemn creation of unrealistic image of enemy. So, authors of this statement consider aggression state Russia as fictional enemy, and in this way they apologize, justify Russian aggression. It is nonsense, because there is a big difference between what Russia done, invaded Ukraine, and indeed it example what is relevant to definition of aggression. It is, of course, aggression. Real actions of Russia on one side, and on another side, demonized image of enemy when propaganda says they are not humans, they are like orcs, like some mythical, absolutely irrational, very bad creatures who you can't negotiate with them, you can't reason. They only rape, kill, so they should be exterminated. There should be no Russian state on the map. It should be totally destroyed to secure Ukraine. Of course, these maximalist goals are not adding security. And by the way, what is difference between notion of peace and notion of security? It is very important. You feel secure, you feel safe. It is subjective. Peace is common security, when everybody feels secure, not because it's some sort of subjective feeling, not because of some old superstitions, like to be secure, I should have atomic bomb, and I could be able to kill all life on the planet, and everybody will be scared, and nobody will dare to touch me. It is not security, because many people with many bombs, and someone will, out of recklessness, press the button, and all life will be extinguished. It is not security. For example, when many political actors say it is for Ukraine to decide how the war will end, are they lost their mind because security should be common security? So how this war will end, it now affects all economies in Europe, in United States, in global South, when people in Africa are just more people are dying from hunger because of obstructions of grain supply from Ukraine, because of obstruction of fertilizer supply from Russia. And it is not going to be stopped. It is only exacerbated because some people are making money on war. Some war profiteers are selling their weapons to American people, so it is shipped to Ukraine, so to Iran, North Korea are selling weapons to Russia. Some people are making money, but what cost of it? It is thousands, tens of thousands of people killed, cities destroyed, hopes lost, minds lost. War profiteering is immoral, and it should be stopped, and war should be stopped.
In May 2023, Ukrainian President Zelenskyy extended martial law, which has banned men between the age of 18 to 60 from leaving the country. Despite these strict policies, The Guardian recently reported that men are hiding in their homes or are paying bribes to get out of the country in Ukraine. Given that you're living in Ukraine, how's the general appetite towards the war evolved from last year up until now? Keep it brief because we have one more question and just 10 minutes remaining.
Guardian writes truth, because indeed many people are avoiding any meeting, any acquaintance with military recruiters, and military recruiters are going more aggressive. Laws are changing to force people to go to recruitment centers, because you can't even have a marriage without military registration. Military registration is a result of going to recruitment center, going through medical examination, and after that you could easily be sent on the front line. And there is no respect to right to refuse to kill. This political persecution, as I said, started not because we demanded this right, but because we successfully upholded this right. We helped prisoner of conscience Vitaly Alexeyenko. Supreme Court released him. We provided legal aid to him, and by the way, today, Vitaly Alexeyenko sent constitutional complaint asking Constitutional Court to review outdated law on alternative non-military service in view of Article 35 of Constitution of Ukraine regarding right to alternative service for people who can't serve in army because of their religious beliefs. Another constitutional complaint was lodged by myself several days after this illegal search, because I experienced arbitrariness of application of this new article of Criminal Code on justification of aggression. I started to read what is going on. I understood how vague is this norm of law. I discussed it with colleagues, and I prepared and submitted to Constitutional Court my complaint. And by the way, it passed through initial filter, and you could find on the website of Constitutional Court of Ukraine my constitutional complaint regarding this new article. This new article, by the way, is widely used to persecute opponents of Zelensky regime. So I think this scandal, worldwide scandal regarding my persecution for political reasons, probably could help also other persecuted people. Other important case, it is lawsuit of very brave member of Ukrainian Pacifist Movement, Andriy Vishnevetsky, taken to army against his religious beliefs. He is Christian pacifist. He asked for discharge from military service on the ground of conscience. He is on front line. He didn't fled, he didn't avoid it, but he declared conscientious objection, and he lodged a lawsuit to President Zelensky, asking the court, Supreme Court of Ukraine, to order President Zelensky to establish procedure of discharge from military service on the ground of conscience, because now, according there is no such procedure, and it is violation of international human rights standards, including human rights standards set by Committee of Ministers of Council of Europe in the recommendations regarding human rights of military personnel. We will not succumb to pressure to these political repressions under absurd pretext of justification of Russian aggression, which we condemned many times, including in this statement, Peace Agenda for Ukraine and the World. We will uphold our right to refuse to kill. It is a basic human right, and it is important way to stop the war.
Following the invasion of the war on Ukraine, the Russian government passed censorship laws which prohibited anti-war statements and called for sanctions. According to Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, these laws criminalize any criticism of Russia's war on Ukraine or questioning the official narrative. This law was not only criticized by Western politicians, but also by Western media and human rights organizations. In addition, when something happens to peace activists or opposition figures such as Alex Navalny in Russia, the Western media immediately reports on it and provides in-depth accounts and coverage. How has the Western media, on the other hand, reacted to your case and your colleagues' cases so far? Has any other media outlet from Germany or the US contacted you so far and offered you a platform? Very briefly.
First of all, thank you for your report in this case. I must also express gratitude to some of your colleagues, for example, to Amy Goodman from Democracy Now!, who indeed reported this situation. Some media, alternative media dedicated to standards of journalism, are reporting human rights violations, and it is good. In Ukraine, my situation was ignored by most media. Initially, one human rights media reported it in some biased way. but still they tried to some degree to comply with journalist standards. It is so painful to see how people convinced that I am the enemy are trying also be objective journalists, and they partly say truth. So I grateful to this Zmina human rights website, at least for came into court hearings, but their news were disseminated by some propagandist media, totally erasing facts, my point of view, presenting it like another enemy is punished or could be punished at last. So in this matter, you're right. Other very important thing today, human rights defender and peace activist is very dangerous way of life. We are persecuted everywhere, and among many persecutions of human rights defenders and peace activists in the world, my home arrest is not the most grave. So many people are killed for their advocacy of peace and human rights, imprisoned. I am at risk of imprisonment because sanction in my case, according to criminal code of Ukraine, should be up to 5 years in prison with confiscation of property. But now I am under night home arrest. Some people in Ukraine, in Russia, in similar situation, according to their article of so-called discreditation of Russian army, could be jailed immediately and treated in jail very badly. And you know, also I am grateful to International Peace Bureau for decision to nominate our brave Russian friends, Russian movement of conscientious objectors, our brave Belarusian friends, Nash Dom, also our Ukrainian Pacifist Movement, for advocacy of right to conscientious objection to military service. International Peace Bureau nominated us to Nobel Peace Prize. It is indeed brings popular attention to problems of conscientious objectors and peace movement. And you know, in previous year, Nobel Peace Prize was given, for example, to Ukrainian organization, leader of which, Mrs. Alexandra Matveychuk, publicly rejected notion of universal peace and brotherhood. She felt that receiving a Nobel Peace Prize exactly for that, for strengthening universal human brotherhood, she should explicitly deny notion very dear to Alfred Nobel. I think, I hope that humankind will came to common sense and truth and love which unite people, and ideal of universal human brotherhood and sisterhood, enshrined in particular in Universal Declaration of Human Rights, will be respected and actively promoted again, because human rights is a fundament of nonviolent way of life, and nonviolent way of life is fundament of democracy. There should be no democracy without nonviolent governance. Democracy is nonviolent governance. It is governance not by beating and killing, but by dialogue, discussion, and peace journalism. Journalism not increasing hatred, but journalism telling the truth and helping people to find common ground. Lies, propaganda make people enemy. It is divide people, and truth unites people. Your profession is very important. Tell truth to the people, help people to understand what is going on, and together build peace.
I think, in my view, people from Germany and the West who support the Ukrainian government with their taxes through military and financial aid will find this interview quite disturbing, given that peace activists like you that are on one hand very objective, critical of the invasion, while on the other hand also keeping an eye on how the Ukraine government is violating free speech and civil liberties. So I thank you for taking part in this interview today, despite all the risk, and we wish you all the best. Please let our viewers know before we leave where they can stay up to date with your case, a link or anything. Please share that with us very shortly.
I will do. Thank you. And since you mentioned weapons, I must say that right to self-defense indeed important. But the best way to defend ourselves it is non-violent resistance, unarmed civilian protection, and the only hope to build better world without wars is to learn how to resist violence without violence.
Yurii, Executive Secretary for the Ukrainian Pacifist Movement, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And thank you for tuning in today. Don't forget to join our alternative channels on Rumble, Telegram, and our podcast called Podbean. YouTube, which is owned by Google, has a long history of shadow banning and censoring alternative voices. So if you want to receive our content in the future, make sure to join these channels as a precaution. Also, if you're watching our content regularly, make sure to donate. Even though we have 121,000 subscribers, only a few % donate to us on a regular basis. So if you want us to continue producing independent nonprofit news and analysis, make sure to donate via PayPal, Better Place, Patreon, or directly to our bank account. I'm your host, San Raza. See you next time.